Have you ever felt like someone's words or actions completely ruined your day? Maybe it was a rude comment, an inconsiderate gesture, or even just a small inconvenience that spiraled into frustration. It's a common experience, and it can feel like your entire sense of peace has been shattered in an instant. The real question, though, is this: why does it have that power? Why do we allow someone else's actions to dictate how we feel? The truth is, no one can control your emotions unless you let them. In the words of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, we are disturbed not by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens. This insight points to the core of emotional mastery. Our reactions are within our control. Life will throw challenges at us, but how we respond is always a choice. The problem arises when we surrender that choice, allowing external events or people to hijack our emotional state. Imagine navigating through your day with a sense of calm so strong that no rude comment or minor setback can throw you off balance. This isn't a distant fantasy, it's emotional mastery. By learning to respond to life's challenges with clarity and grace, you can preserve your peace, no matter what comes your way. As the philosopher Marcus Aurelius wisely stated, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In this episode, we'll explore 10 transformative lessons that will help you regain control over your emotions. These lessons aren't about suppressing your feelings or pretending not to care. They're about building the mental strength to navigate life's challenges without losing your inner peace. Whether it's dealing with criticism, learning to let go of grudges, or setting clear boundaries, you'll gain practical tools to protect your emotional freedom and walk through life unshaken. Let's begin this journey toward emotional mastery, where your peace is truly yours to control. Lesson 1. Understand that your reactions are your choice. Have you ever been caught in a moment where someone's behavior or words completely threw you off balance? Perhaps you were having a peaceful day when suddenly something happened. An unexpected comment, an offhand remark, or a frustrating situation. The initial reaction might be anger, frustration, or even sadness. We've all been there, and it feels like everything that was calm and collected is now in disarray. But here's the key truth. No one has the power to ruin your day unless you give them that power. In the Stoic philosophy, this concept is explained with great clarity. Epictetus, a well-known Stoic philosopher, famously stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." His words underscore a critical principle of emotional mastery. Our reactions are a choice. While we cannot control the events that occur in our lives, we can always control how we respond to them. This is the foundation of emotional freedom. Let's consider a simple analogy. Imagine you're walking through a busy city, enjoying a calm afternoon when suddenly someone bumps into you without saying sorry. In that moment, there's a choice. You could let your anger rise, feeling disrespected and upset, or you could choose to let it go, continuing on with your day as if nothing happened. The event itself is neutral, but your reaction to it is where your power lies. This idea can be further explored by looking at the Stoic concept of external events versus internal responses. The Stoics believed that external events, the things that happen to us, are outside of our control. What people say, how they act, and the challenges life throws our way are all external forces. However, the way we respond to these forces is entirely within our domain. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The strength to remain calm, to stay focused, and to choose peace lies in recognizing that our inner world is not governed by what happens outside of us, but by how we decide to interpret and react to those events. When someone criticizes us unfairly, or when we face a challenge that disrupts our day, it's easy to fall into a knee-jerk reaction. You might find yourself getting defensive, angry, or resentful. But consider the wisdom of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, who wrote in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Frankl's insight is powerful. He's telling us that between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a crucial space, a moment of pause. In that space, we have the power to choose. We can react impulsively, or we can take a step back, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with our values, our long-term peace, and our emotional well-being. The reality is that our emotions often arise automatically in response to stimuli. It's a natural, instinctive part of being human. Anger, fear, frustration, and sadness are all emotions that we feel instinctively when faced with certain situations. But emotions are not commands. They are signals. They tell us something about our environment or our internal state, but they don't have to control us. By cultivating awareness and mindfulness, we can recognize these emotional triggers and, instead of reacting impulsively, take a moment to pause and decide how we want to respond. This practice is known as mindful awareness, and it's a powerful tool for emotional mastery. Mindfulness allows us to observe our thoughts and feelings without being swept away by them. When you feel anger rising after someone cuts you off in traffic, for example, mindfulness enables you to notice that anger without letting it dictate your behavior. Instead of immediately honking your horn or shouting at the other driver, you can take a deep breath, recognize that the situation is beyond your control, and choose to remain calm. The process of pausing before reacting is crucial because it allows us to separate the feeling from the reaction. You can feel anger or frustration without necessarily acting on it. This separation creates space between stimulus and response, just as Frankl described. When we create that space, we give ourselves the opportunity to decide what response will best serve us, rather than being at the mercy of our immediate emotional impulses. Let's revisit the example of a colleague dismissing your idea in a meeting. The automatic reaction might be to feel disrespected, defensive, or even humiliated. However, by taking a pause before responding, you have the opportunity to reflect. Is this about me, or is it their stress or bias showing? By reframing the situation, you can view the dismissal not as a personal attack, but as a reflection of the other person's perspective or stress. This shift in perception can help you diffuse the emotional charge and prevent a rash, reactive response. The goal isn't to suppress your feelings, but to recognize that your feelings don't dictate your actions. You have the ability to choose your response based on your values and long-term goals, rather than simply reacting to what's happening in the moment. The more you practice this mindful approach, the more skilled you'll become at maintaining your peace, no matter the circumstances. Here's a simple strategy to start incorporating this mindset into your daily life. Pause and identify when you feel triggered. When something happens that causes an emotional reaction, take a moment to notice what you're feeling. Name the emotion, anger, frustration, hurt, etc., to break the automatic reaction cycle. Ask questions. Reflect on why you're feeling this way. Is it because of the situation, or is it your interpretation of the situation that's causing the emotion? This reflection helps you separate your reaction from the event itself. Choose your response. Once you've identified your emotional reaction and understood its origin, decide how you want to respond. Choose a response that aligns with your values, your long-term peace, and the person you want to be. By practicing this mindset, you gain control over your reactions. You stop giving others the power to dictate your emotional state, and instead, you reclaim that power. As you walk through life with the understanding that your reactions are always your choice, you'll find that your emotional peace becomes more resilient to external disturbances. The next time you feel triggered, remember, it's not the event itself that's ruining your day. It's your reaction, and you always have the power to choose. Lesson 2. Stop expecting people to behave like you. Have you ever found yourself deeply disappointed because someone didn't act in a way that you thought was right? Maybe you expected your friends to offer support when you were feeling low, or you felt frustrated when a colleague didn't deliver on a task you entrusted them with. These situations often leave us questioning why people don't meet our expectations. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, if I would do this for them, why wouldn't they do the same for me? The truth, however, is this. Expecting others to behave like you is an exercise in frustration. People are not wired to think, feel, or act the way you do. Each person has a unique set of experiences, values, and beliefs that shape their actions. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely pointed out, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. The problem arises when we project our own standards and values onto others, expecting them to behave in the same way we would in similar situations. This expectation not only leads to disappointment, but also leaves us feeling powerless and emotionally drained. In life, we are often disappointed by others because we hold them to our own personal standards. We assume that if we treat someone with kindness, they will reciprocate with the same level of consideration. However, we forget that their response is shaped by their own upbringing, emotional state, and worldview. For instance, you might value punctuality and expect others to arrive on time, but someone who has grown up in a different environment where punctuality was not prioritized may not hold the same standard. When their actions don't align with your expectations, it's easy to feel hurt, frustrated, or resentful. The problem with this mindset is that it forces us to depend on others to maintain our emotional equilibrium. We wait for them to meet our standards, and when they don't, we allow their behavior to upset us. This makes our emotional well-being dependent on things we cannot control, the thoughts and actions of other people. In this way, we lose control over our peace and give others power over our emotions. Instead of focusing on how others should act, we can free ourselves by accepting that people are going to behave according to their own beliefs and experiences. Acceptance does not mean tolerating bad behavior. It means recognizing that we cannot change others and that it is not our responsibility to do so. As the philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Letting go of our expectations about others allows us to create space for acceptance and understanding, and this freedom leads to peace. Consider the example of a friend who forgets to keep a promise. You might feel hurt, but instead of making them wrong or holding a grudge, pause and reflect. What are the factors influencing their behavior? Maybe they are going through a stressful period in their life, or perhaps they simply have a different idea of what's important. By stepping back and releasing the expectation that they should act the way you would, you open the door to understanding and compassion rather than resentment. This shift in perspective is crucial because it helps you stop seeing the actions of others as personal affronts. When we expect others to behave in line with our standards, we internalize their actions as reflections of our worth, and this leads to frustration. For example, if a colleague dismisses your idea in a meeting and you take it personally, it's easy to feel rejected or unvalued. But if you reframe the situation and recognize that their dismissal may be a result of their own stress or lack of understanding, you can detach from the emotional reaction and avoid internalizing their behavior. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasizes the importance of accepting things as they are. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and surly." While this might sound harsh, the idea is to approach life with the expectation that people will act in their own ways, not necessarily in a way that fits your personal expectations. By accepting this reality, you free yourself from the burden of disappointment. It is important to understand that their behavior does not define you or your worth. It simply reflects their current state of being. By letting go of the expectation that others should behave like you create emotional freedom for yourself. You stop giving away your peace and happiness to others and start focusing on what you can control, your response. In this way, you maintain your composure and protect your emotional well-being. When you accept that people will act according to their own experiences, you no longer feel the need to change them to meet your standards. Let's explore a practical exercise to help you release these expectations. Acknowledge your assumptions. When you feel hurt or frustrated by someone's behavior, ask yourself, what was I expecting them to do? Are these expectations based on my personal values, or am I assuming they should act as I would? Challenge your expectations. Reflect on whether it's realistic or fair to expect others to behave in the same way you would. Recognize that they are acting based on their own experiences and perspectives, which may differ from yours. Shift your focus. Instead of trying to control how others behave, focus on how you can respond in a way that maintains your peace. Ask yourself, how can I choose to respond in a way that aligns with my values, regardless of what they do? This mindset shift isn't about giving up on your values or tolerating bad behavior. It's about understanding that your peace and emotional well-being are too valuable to be dependent on someone else's actions. You don't have to let their behavior disrupt your state of mind. By focusing on how you respond rather than how others behave, you regain control of your emotional landscape. Summary. The key to emotional freedom is accepting that you cannot control how others behave. They will act based on their own experiences, values, and emotions. By releasing the expectation that they should behave according to your standards, you free yourself from unnecessary emotional weight. You regain control over your reactions and protect your peace. As the great philosopher Epictetus reminds us, the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. When you stop expecting others to meet your standards, you create space for peace and growth, regardless of the challenges others present. Lesson 3. Let go of the need to always be right. How often do you find yourself caught in an argument, determined to prove that you are right? Whether it's a trivial discussion about which route is faster, or a deeper disagreement with a friend or family member, the need to be right can sometimes take over our emotions and actions. We cling to our perspectives, eager to show that our way of thinking is the only valid one and that the other person is wrong. But what if the need to always be right is not only unnecessary but also emotionally draining? The drive to be right stems from a deep-seated desire to protect our sense of self-worth. We fear that being wrong may diminish us, make us look foolish, or undermine our credibility. Yet, in our insistence on being right, we often lose sight of the bigger picture, our emotional peace, our relationships, and even the wisdom to grow. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously stated, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." The very belief that we must always be right can disturb our peace, leading us to react emotionally and defensively when confronted with a different perspective. When we argue, we often focus so much on winning that we forget about the true purpose of the conversation. We're not seeking to understand or resolve the issue. We're only trying to prove ourselves correct. This is particularly evident in discussions where both sides are deeply entrenched in their own views. The need to be right becomes less about finding the truth and more about maintaining control, saving face, or protecting our ego. The more we cling to this need, the more likely we are to escalate conflict and damage relationships. Consider an example. You're having a disagreement with a friend or partner over something seemingly small. Maybe they believe one thing and you believe another. The conversation starts to heat up as each of you tries to prove your point. What starts as a simple discussion soon escalates into a battle of wills. The need to be right becomes more important than the relationship itself. In such moments, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters, the connection between you and the other person, and the opportunity to learn from each other's perspectives. Letting go of the need to always be right doesn't mean abandoning your principles or your beliefs. It doesn't mean allowing others to walk all over you or accepting harmful behavior. It simply means choosing peace over pride, understanding over defensiveness, and growth over being right. By releasing the attachment to always winning the argument, we make room for greater wisdom and emotional freedom. In fact, many philosophers have discussed the importance of humility and the value of stepping back from the need to always prove ourselves right. Socrates, one of the most influential philosophers in history, famously said, "I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing." This statement reflects a profound humility, an understanding that no matter how much we know, there is always more to learn, and there are always perspectives other than our own. Socrates' approach to dialogue was rooted in curiosity, not confrontation. He sought to understand, to ask questions, and to learn from others, rather than to defend his own position. In the same way, we can choose to engage in discussions with a mindset of curiosity rather than a need to be right. When we let go of the pressure to win every argument, we open ourselves up to the possibility of growth. We start to view disagreements not as a battle, but as an opportunity to learn, to refine our own thinking, and to gain new insights. The philosopher Lao Tzu emphasized this wisdom when he said, "He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know." The desire to speak out and be heard often stems from the need to assert our dominance in a conversation. But true wisdom often comes from listening, from absorbing new information, and from reflecting on our beliefs. Letting go of the need to be right is a powerful way to cultivate emotional mastery. When we free ourselves from the urge to constantly prove ourselves correct, we create space for peace and clarity. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to important issues. Rather, it means that we choose our battles wisely, focusing on what truly matters, and letting go of the small, insignificant disagreements that drain our energy. By choosing peace over being right, we allow ourselves to maintain emotional balance, regardless of the external circumstances. Here are some practical steps to help you let go of the need to always be right. Pause before reacting. When you feel the urge to argue or defend your position, take a moment to breathe. Reflect on whether this disagreement is truly important and whether it's worth your emotional energy. Sometimes stepping back gives you the clarity to choose a more measured, peaceful response. Seek understanding, not victory. Instead of focusing on proving yourself right, shift your focus to understanding the other person's perspective. Ask questions, listen deeply, and show curiosity about their thoughts. This approach not only de-escalates the situation, but also opens the door to mutual learning and growth. Pick your battles. Not every disagreement needs to turn into an argument. Ask yourself whether the issue at hand is truly worth engaging in a heated debate. Often, the smallest disagreements are better left alone, as they don't impact your long-term peace or relationships. Save your energy for discussions that align with your values and truly matter. Embrace the possibility of being wrong. Acknowledge that being wrong doesn't diminish your value or intelligence. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to refine your understanding of the world. As the philosopher Zeno of Citium said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Embrace humility in conversation, and you'll find that you grow stronger, both intellectually and emotionally. Focus on the relationship, not the argument. At the end of the day, relationships matter more than being right. If you're in a disagreement with a friend, family member, or colleague, remember that the goal is to maintain a positive connection. Choose to nurture the relationship rather than winning the argument. As the philosopher Albert Einstein wisely said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." Let go of the need to defend your position at all costs, and instead approach the conversation with an open heart and mind. When you let go of the need to always be right, you release yourself from the emotional burden of conflict. You free up mental and emotional energy to focus on what truly matters: growth, connection, and peace. In the end, the true power lies not in being right, but in knowing when to let go of the need to prove it. By practicing humility, embracing curiosity, and choosing understanding over confrontation, you will find that peace, not victory, is the ultimate reward. Lesson 4. Stop letting others' words define your worth. Have you ever been deeply affected by something someone said about you? Perhaps a harsh comment from a colleague, a criticism from a loved one, or even a seemingly casual remark that made you question your worth. It's a common experience. Someone's words sting, and suddenly, your confidence starts to crumble. We allow their opinions to shape how we see ourselves. But here's the critical truth. Your worth is not defined by anyone else's words. We live in a world where opinions are often shared freely, and sometimes without much thought or consideration for how they might affect others. Whether it's a compliment, criticism, or passing judgment, the words of others can have a powerful impact on our emotional state. But why do we let these external judgments hold such sway over our sense of self-worth? Why do we allow someone else's opinion to influence how we feel about ourselves? The Stoic philosopher Epictetus offers valuable insight into this problem. He taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." His teachings remind us that we have control over how we respond to the words of others. It's not the words themselves that should shape our self-perception, but our interpretation and response to them. This is where emotional mastery comes in, learning to detach your self-worth from the opinions of others. One of the most profound examples of this detachment comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. He faced constant criticism from the public and even from his fellow philosophers. Yet Socrates remained unshaken by others' words because he knew that his true worth was not tied to their judgments. He famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." For Socrates, his worth was rooted in his own understanding and pursuit of knowledge, not in the fleeting opinions of others. In other words, your value comes from your own principles, actions, and self-reflection, not from the judgments of the external world. When we tie our worth to others' opinions, we are giving away our power. We are surrendering our internal sense of value to people who may not even have a full understanding of who we are or what we are capable of. Every time we let someone else's words define us, we reinforce the idea that our self-worth is something that can be easily manipulated. This dependence on external validation makes our emotional state fragile and subject to the whims of others. In the book Meditations, the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius emphasized that we should look within to find our true value. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Our strength lies in our ability to recognize that our worth is intrinsic. It's not something that can be given or taken away by someone else's words or actions. When we ground our value in our own inner sense of integrity, we stop allowing external judgments to affect our emotional well-being. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you've put a lot of effort into a project at work, and you're genuinely proud of it. However, when you present it, a colleague criticizes it harshly and you feel disheartened. It's natural to feel disappointed, but how you respond in that moment determines whether you allow their words to define your worth. If you internalize their criticism as a reflection of your abilities or character, you might begin to doubt yourself. But what if, instead of taking their words personally, you viewed the criticism as feedback to help you grow? This shift in perspective helps you maintain your sense of worth and avoid being swayed by external opinions. Another great philosopher, Lao Tzu, offered wisdom that aligns with this approach. He said, "Care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner." When we base our sense of self on others' opinions, we become prisoners to their approval or disapproval. We constantly look to the outside world for validation, and this creates emotional turmoil. True freedom, according to Lao Tzu, comes from detaching from the need for external validation and focusing on our own inner truth. It's important to note that letting go of the need for others' approval doesn't mean becoming indifferent or dismissing feedback altogether. Constructive criticism can be incredibly valuable for personal growth. The key is in recognizing the difference between feedback that serves your development and negative commentary that is merely a reflection of someone else's biases, insecurities, or personal issues. When you stop letting others' negative words define you, you protect your peace and emotional stability.
Here are some practical steps to help you stop letting others' words define your worth. Pause before reacting. When someone's words affect you, take a moment to pause and breathe. This creates space for reflection, allowing you to choose a
measured response rather than reacting impulsively to their opinion. Separate fact from opinion. When someone criticizes you, ask yourself, is there truth in what they are saying, or is this just their perspective? Recognize that not all opinions are grounded in objective reality. Some people offer their opinions based on their personal biases or insecurities, not facts. Reaffirm your intrinsic worth. Remind yourself that your value is not tied to what others think of you. Your worth is inherent, rooted in your actions, values, and integrity. No one else has the authority to define your worth unless you allow them to. Seek constructive feedback. Instead of focusing on negative or dismissive comments, seek feedback that is aimed at helping you grow. Focus on learning from others in a way that builds your strength and confidence rather than eroding your self-esteem. Cultivate self-compassion. Be kind to yourself especially in the face of criticism. Recognize that everyone makes mistakes and has room for growth. Your worth doesn't diminish because of a mistake or someone else's harsh words. Self-compassion helps you bounce back from criticism without internalizing it. Surround yourself with positive influences. While it's important not to let others' words define you, it's also essential to surround yourself with people who uplift and encourage you. Positive, supportive relationships help reinforce your sense of self-worth and create an environment where you feel valued for who you are. By practicing these steps, you begin to develop the emotional resilience needed to remain grounded in your own sense of value, regardless of others' opinions. This doesn't mean that you'll never feel hurt by criticism or unkind words. It means that you'll be better equipped to handle them without letting them define your self-worth. In conclusion, true emotional freedom comes from recognizing that your worth is intrinsic, not dependent on the approval or judgment of others. When you stop letting others' words define you, you protect your peace and cultivate a sense of confidence that comes from within. As the philosopher Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you understand your own worth, you are no longer swayed by the opinions of others. You become free to live authentically, guided by your own values and principles, and your sense of peace will no longer be at the mercy of others' words. Lesson 5. Protect your energy by setting boundaries. In today's world, it can feel like everyone is constantly demanding something from us: our time, our attention, our energy. Friends, family, co-workers, even strangers seem to have expectations of us that never seem to end. We live in a society that often praises selflessness, encouraging us to say yes to everyone else, even at the cost of our own well-being. But here's the truth: you cannot pour from an empty cup. Without setting clear boundaries, you risk depleting your emotional, mental, and physical energy, leaving little for yourself and those who truly matter to you. Boundaries are not selfish. They are a form of self-respect and emotional protection. They allow you to preserve your energy, maintain healthy relationships, and focus on your personal well-being. Without boundaries, you open the door for others to take more than you're able or willing to give, which leads to resentment, burnout, and a sense of being overwhelmed. In this lesson, we'll explore the importance of setting boundaries and how doing so helps you protect your energy while fostering healthier, more balanced relationships. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood the concept of boundaries well. He taught, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Boundaries are, in essence, a reaction to how we interact with others and the demands they place on us. By establishing clear limits, we ensure that we are not overwhelmed or taken advantage of. Boundaries empower us to decide what we will and won't tolerate in our relationships and interactions, which ultimately protects our peace. However, setting boundaries isn't always easy. There's often a fear of disappointing others or feeling guilty for saying no. But as the philosopher Socrates reminds us, he who is not a good servant will not be a good master. In other words, if we don't learn to care for ourselves first, we won't be able to serve others effectively. If we constantly prioritize others' needs at the expense of our own, we become depleted and resentful, which makes it harder to give our best to those we care about. One of the biggest challenges people face in setting boundaries is the fear of conflict or rejection. We worry that others will be upset or that they will judge us as selfish or inconsiderate. But here's the reality: setting boundaries is not about rejecting others. It's about protecting your peace and well-being. When you say no to something that drains you or makes you uncomfortable, you are saying yes to your own mental and emotional health. This mindset shift allows you to approach boundary setting with confidence and clarity. The philosopher Lao Tzu, in his Tao Te Ching, offered timeless wisdom on the importance of balance and self-care when he said, "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious." Boundaries help us recognize when we need to engage and when we need to retreat. By knowing our limits and respecting them, we are able to navigate relationships and obligations without compromising our inner peace. Boundaries help us conserve our energy, enabling us to engage in ways that are authentic and purposeful, rather than being scattered and overwhelmed by external demands. Let's consider a common scenario. You've been asked to take on an additional project at work, even though your plate is already full. You feel guilty about saying no because you don't want to disappoint your boss or coworkers. However, if you agree, you risk spreading yourself too thin, which could lead to stress, burnout, and resentment. In this situation, setting a boundary means recognizing your own limits and communicating them effectively. You might say, "I'd love to help, but I'm currently unable to take on any more tasks without sacrificing the quality of my work. I need to focus on my current responsibilities." By being clear and respectful in your communication, you set a boundary that protects your energy while maintaining your professionalism. It's important to note that boundaries don't just apply to work or social obligations. They extend to all aspects of our lives, including relationships. In any relationship, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners, it's essential to establish boundaries that safeguard your emotional health. Boundaries help define what is acceptable behavior and what is not. Without them, you risk allowing others to cross lines that make you uncomfortable, leading to feelings of resentment and dissatisfaction. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche also spoke to the importance of boundaries when he said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When you have a clear sense of purpose and personal values, you can more easily define the boundaries that protect your energy and preserve your peace. Your boundaries reflect your values and your understanding of what matters most to you. Whether it's protecting your time, your emotional well-being, or your personal space, setting boundaries allows you to align your actions with your deeper sense of purpose and commitment to your own growth. Let's explore some practical steps to help you set healthy boundaries and protect your energy. Be clear about your needs. The first step in setting boundaries is to be clear with yourself about what you need. What are your limits in terms of time, energy, and emotional availability? Reflect on your personal values and what you're willing to tolerate in different situations. Knowing your needs will help you communicate them effectively to others. Communicate assertively and respectfully. Once you're clear about your boundaries, it's important to communicate them clearly to others. Be assertive but respectful in your communication. Instead of saying, "I don't have time for this," try, "I'm currently unable to take on this task, but I appreciate your understanding." Setting boundaries is not about being confrontational. It's about protecting your peace in a healthy, respectful way. Learn to say no. Saying no is one of the most important tools in protecting your energy. You don't have to explain yourself or justify your decision. Simply saying, "No, I can't do that right now," is enough. Trust that you are not obligated to say yes to every request. Your time and energy are valuable, and it's okay to prioritize your well-being. Stick to your boundaries. Once you've set a boundary, it's important to enforce it. This can be difficult, especially if you fear disappointing others. However, remember that consistency is key. When you uphold your boundaries, you teach others to respect them as well. If someone tries to cross a boundary, calmly remind them of your limits and reinforce your position. Practice self-care. Setting boundaries is an act of self-care. Take time to nurture your body, mind, and spirit. Prioritize activities that replenish your energy, whether it's through rest, creative pursuits, exercise, or spending time with loved ones. When you prioritize self-care, you ensure that you have the energy and emotional resources to give to others in a way that is sustainable and healthy. In conclusion, setting boundaries is essential to protecting your energy and maintaining your emotional well-being. Boundaries are not selfish. They are a necessary form of self-respect that enables you to preserve your peace and engage in relationships and work without feeling overwhelmed. As the philosopher Seneca wisely said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." By setting clear boundaries and respecting your limits, you take control of your own life, safeguarding your energy and ensuring that you can show up as your best self for others. Remember, your peace and well-being are worth protecting, and setting boundaries is the key to doing just that. Lesson 6. Detach from the opinions of others. How often do we find ourselves affected by what others think of us? It could be a compliment, a piece of constructive criticism, or more likely, a harsh judgment that cuts deep. We are social creatures, wired to seek approval, and yet, The more we rely on the opinions of others to define our self-worth, the more we hand over our emotional power. True emotional freedom comes when we learn to detach from the opinions of others. The desire for validation from others is natural. We want to be seen, heard, and appreciated, especially by those whose opinions we value. But when we place our sense of worth in the hands of others, we become vulnerable to their judgments. Their thoughts about us become a fluctuating source of self-esteem. One minute we feel great because someone praised us, the next we feel devastated because someone criticized us. This reliance on external validation leads to an unstable emotional state and compromises our peace of mind. The key to mastering our emotions lies in detaching from the constant need for approval. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus, addressed this challenge head-on. He taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." What does this have to do with detaching from others' opinions? Epictetus reminds us that our emotional peace should not be dependent on external factors, such as praise or criticism from others. The more we want others' approval, the more we allow them to control our emotional state. Epictetus urges us to cultivate inner wealth, self-knowledge, self-respect, and autonomy, so that we are no longer swayed by the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, echoed this sentiment in his Meditations. The opinion of others is no more than a reflection of their own life experiences and biases, and it says more about them than it does about you. When we internalize others' opinions, we ignore the fact that their judgments are often shaped by their own experiences, beliefs, and limitations. Just as we cannot control their opinions, we cannot allow them to define us. Their views are subjective and reflect their perspective of the world, not an objective truth about who we are. This idea of detachment from others' opinions also resonates with the teachings of Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, who advised, "He who does not trust enough will not be trusted." Lao Tzu's wisdom suggests that to find peace and emotional stability, we must first trust ourselves and our own worth. When we trust in our own judgment and values, the opinions of others lose their power over us. Their thoughts and judgments no longer dictate our self-worth because we are grounded in our own beliefs and inner truth. Let's take a practical example to illustrate this. Imagine you've just shared a personal accomplishment or idea with a group of people, and one person immediately shoots it down with a critical remark. Instantly, you feel deflated. It's a common experience. But why does it affect you so deeply? Perhaps it's because you've attached your sense of value to their approval. You feel like their opinion of your idea is a reflection of your worth. What if, instead of internalizing their critique, you viewed it as just one person's perspective, one opinion among many? Perhaps their judgment is more about their own insecurities or misunderstandings, not a reflection of your abilities or worth. By detaching from their opinion, you regain your emotional power and retain your peace of mind. You are no longer dependent on their approval to feel good about yourself or your accomplishments. This shift in perspective is the foundation of emotional freedom. Let's consider a more personal example. Imagine a close friend or family member criticizes a life choice you've made, such as your career path or lifestyle. Their disapproval stings because you value their opinion. In this case, the challenge is not to disregard their opinion entirely, but to recognize that their viewpoint is just that, an opinion. It is shaped by their experiences, values, and fears. It does not define your worth or the correctness of your path. You have the ability to trust your own judgment, and by doing so, you detach from their judgment and protect your emotional well-being. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wisely stated, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Knowing your own purpose, values, and sense of self is the key to weathering criticism and judgment. When you are clear about who you are and what you stand for, the opinions of others lose their grip on you. You stop seeking external validation and instead draw from an inner reservoir of strength and confidence. Practical steps to detach from the opinions of others. Shift your focus inward. Instead of seeking validation from others, focus on understanding and affirming your own values. Regular self-reflection helps you solidify your sense of self, so others' opinions don't have the power to sway your emotions. When you know who you are, external validation becomes irrelevant. Recognize the subjectivity of others' opinions. Understand that everyone's perspective is shaped by their personal experiences and biases. Their opinions are not universal truths. They are reflections of their own worldview. Remind yourself that their judgment says more about them than it does about you. Practice mindfulness. When you receive criticism or praise, take a moment to pause and reflect before reacting. Mindfulness helps you create a space between external events and your emotional response. In this space, you can choose to detach from the immediate emotional reaction and assess whether the opinion is worth internalizing. Set healthy boundaries. If someone's opinion or judgment is particularly hurtful or toxic, it's important to set boundaries. This doesn't mean shutting them out entirely, but it means protecting yourself from the emotional impact of their words. You have the right to limit your exposure to negativity and seek out people who support and uplift you. Cultivate self-compassion. Be kind to yourself in moments of criticism or judgment. Recognize that no one is perfect and everyone makes mistakes. Self-compassion helps you navigate others' opinions with a sense of grace, knowing that their words do not diminish your worth or your ability to grow. Reaffirm your purpose and values. Regularly revisit your goals, values, and the reasons behind your decisions. When you are clear about your purpose, the opinions of others have less power to shake your confidence. Your worth is not dependent on external judgments. It is rooted in your ability to live authentically according to your principles. By practicing these steps, you can begin to detach from the opinions of others and cultivate a sense of self-worth that is grounded in your own values, purpose, and inner truth. The more you detach from others' judgments, the more emotionally resilient and empowered you will become. In conclusion, emotional freedom comes from knowing your own worth and no longer relying on the opinions of others to define who you are. The Stoics, Lao Tzu, and other philosophers remind us that our value is intrinsic, not dependent on the fluctuating opinions of others. When you stop seeking external validation and instead trust in your own judgment, you protect your emotional peace and create space for growth. Remember, your worth is not up for debate. It's yours to define. By detaching from others' opinions, you regain control of your emotional landscape and live a life that is truly yours. Lesson 7. Respond with silence. Not anger. Anger is one of the most powerful emotions that can cloud our judgment and disrupt our peace. It can be triggered by a range of situations, whether it's someone making a rude remark, a colleague undermining your efforts, or even the frustration of being stuck in traffic. In the heat of the moment, the instinct to lash out, to argue, or to retaliate can feel overwhelming. However, responding with anger often escalates conflict, damages relationships, and compromises our emotional well-being. The true power, however, lies in responding with silence instead of anger. This concept of silence as a response is deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy, where restraint is seen as a virtue. The Stoics believe that our emotions, especially anger, are fleeting and often based on external events over which we have no control. The way we respond to these emotions, however, is completely within our power. In this lesson, we'll explore how silence can be a tool for emotional mastery and the importance of choosing peace over impulsiveness. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, provided timeless wisdom about handling conflict and anger. The best answer to anger is silence. When faced with provocation or criticism, silence creates space between the stimulus, the trigger, and your response. Instead of allowing anger to cloud your judgment and force you into reactive behavior, silence grants you the time to reflect and choose a response that aligns with your values and emotional peace. Why does silence have such power? When we respond in anger, we risk saying or doing things we might later regret. In the heat of the moment, our emotions are often stronger than our reason. This can lead to impulsive actions or words that escalate the conflict, hurt others, and damage relationships. Anger, as Marcus Aurelius points out, feeds off of itself. The more you engage with it, the more it grows. On the other hand, silence starves the fire of anger. When we choose silence, we break the cycle of aggression and allow ourselves time to regain control. Let's think about a scenario where anger is likely to arise. Imagine you're in a heated argument with a friend or family member. The words they use might sting, or you may feel misunderstood and attacked. Your first instinct is to respond quickly, to defend yourself, or to win the argument. But what if, instead of retaliating, you simply paused and chose silence? In that moment of pause, you allow the anger to dissipate, and you create space for a more thoughtful, measured response, or perhaps no response at all. This idea is not new. In fact, it was the Buddha who said, "When you react, you let others dictate your emotions. When you respond, you are in control." The difference between reacting and responding lies in the pause. When we react, we are letting our emotions control us, often leading to a rash, regretful decision. When we respond, we take a moment to reflect, to think about the most peaceful and constructive course of action. In this way, silence becomes a powerful tool for emotional control and self-mastery. To better understand the power of silence, let's turn to the teachings of Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who emphasized the importance of internal control. He wrote, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This choice, whether to engage in anger or to remain silent, can drastically change the course of an interaction. Silence is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it is an active choice to protect our emotional equilibrium and to avoid engaging in conflict that is not worth our energy. In addition, silence allows us to maintain the moral high ground. When someone insults us or behaves poorly toward us, responding in anger may provide temporary satisfaction, but it only perpetuates negativity. Silence, on the other hand, denies the other person the emotional reaction they were hoping for. It prevents us from sinking into the same level of hostility and keeps us from engaging in petty arguments that don't serve our greater goals or values. Let's explore a real-life example of how silence can help us in moments of provocation. Imagine you're at work and a colleague makes a disparaging comment about your project or dismisses your ideas in a meeting. The urge to defend yourself might rise instantly, and you may feel that you need to argue to justify your position. However, by taking a moment of silence, you create the opportunity to assess the situation with clarity. You can then choose to either respond with calm or, if appropriate, say nothing at all. By choosing silence, you preserve your dignity and emotional stability, while also keeping the conversation from escalating into something more harmful. As the philosopher Lao Tzu wrote, "Silence is a source of great strength." This silence is not a passive avoidance of conflict, but an active, conscious decision to disengage from negative patterns of behavior. Silence allows us to observe, reflect, and act in a way that aligns with our higher values and goals. How to respond with silence, not anger. Practical steps: pause before reacting. The first step in choosing silence over anger is to pause. When you feel the initial surge of anger rising, take a deep breath and allow yourself a moment to collect your thoughts. This simple pause can break the automatic response cycle and give you the clarity needed to choose your reaction consciously. Embrace the power of non-response. Not every situation requires a verbal response. When provoked, sometimes the most powerful choice is to say nothing. By doing so, you take away the power from the other person and stop the conflict from escalating. Listen without defending. Often the need to respond in anger comes from a feeling that we must defend ourselves or our position. Instead, practice active listening. Sometimes people simply want to be heard, and by listening without rushing to offer a rebuttal, you demonstrate maturity and emotional strength. Use silence to regain control. Silence helps you regain control over your emotions. When you are silent, you are not allowing your anger to control you. Instead, you are asserting your control over how you respond to the situation. This practice gives you the space to decide whether a response is necessary, and if so, what that response should be. Respond with a measured, calm response. If a response is necessary after the silence, make sure it is calm and measured. By waiting, you give yourself time to think about your words and choose a response that aligns with your values, rather than reacting impulsively in anger. Reflect on the larger picture. Before reacting, consider the long-term impact of your words and actions. Ask yourself, Will this argument, this response, matter in a day, a month, or a year? Often, the things that trigger us in the moment lose their significance when viewed from a broader perspective. Choosing silence allows you to step back and avoid getting caught up in the small conflicts that don't truly matter. In a world where emotional reactions are often valued over thoughtful responses, choosing silence over anger is an act of profound strength and wisdom. Silence allows us to protect our peace, prevent unnecessary conflict, and choose our response from a place of clarity rather than impulse. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best answer to anger is silence. In moments of provocation, silence becomes a shield that protects us from reacting in ways that undermine our emotional well-being. By embracing silence, we not only preserve our inner peace, but also gain the ability to navigate difficult situations with greater grace and emotional control. So, the next time anger rises within you, remember the power of silence. It may be the most powerful response you can offer. Lesson 8. Practice gratitude to dissolve. Anger is a natural emotion, and in many ways it serves as a signal that something is wrong. It can motivate us to stand up for ourselves, protect boundaries, or change unfavorable circumstances. However, unchecked anger can also be destructive. It clouds our judgment, harms relationships, and depletes our emotional energy. So how do we transform anger into a more constructive force? The answer lies in practicing gratitude, a powerful tool that can dissolve anger and restore emotional balance. At first glance, gratitude and anger might seem like opposing forces. After all, how can you feel thankful when you're furious? But the relationship between the two is profound. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's wrong to what's right. When practiced consistently, it creates a mindset that allows you to reframe negative situations, seeing them not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth and learning. As the philosopher Marcus Aurelius put it, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. In other words, how you choose to view a situation directly impacts your emotional state, and gratitude is one of the most effective ways to shift your perspective. The philosophical foundation of gratitude. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, understood the power of gratitude in emotional mastery. Epictetus famously said, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others." He recognized that gratitude is not just a reaction to receiving good things. It's an attitude that allows us to find peace and serenity, even in the most challenging circumstances. When faced with adversity, instead of reacting with anger or resentment, the Stoics taught that we should focus on what we still have and what we can still control. This practice of gratitude is not about denying or suppressing negative emotions, but about shifting our attention away from what we cannot change and toward what we can appreciate. By practicing gratitude, we allow ourselves to acknowledge the good, even when it seems overshadowed by frustration or anger. The philosopher Seneca, another Stoic, suggested that by cultivating gratitude, we could transform how we experience adversity. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When we focus on what's lacking or what's wrong, we exacerbate our negative emotions. But by turning our attention to what we have, we reframe the narrative, diminishing the power of anger." How gratitude dissolves. Gratitude works by shifting our emotional focus. When we feel angry, our attention is directed solely at the perceived wrong, the thing or person that has upset us. This laser focus on the negative fuels the fire of anger. However, when we actively practice gratitude, we redirect our attention to the positive aspects of our lives. This simple act of reframing has a powerful impact on our emotions, especially anger. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, irritation, and perhaps even anger. You could focus solely on the inconvenience, on the time you're losing, and on the person who cut you off in the lane. This will likely intensify your anger and sense of helplessness. But what if, instead of stewing in frustration, you practice gratitude? You might start by acknowledging that you have a car, that you're healthy enough to drive, that you have the opportunity to attend the meeting, or even that you can enjoy some quiet time alone in the car. Shifting your focus in this way doesn't ignore the situation, but it reframes your experience. The anger doesn't disappear immediately, but it dissolves, replaced by a sense of peace and a more balanced perspective. In this way, gratitude serves as a buffer against anger. By actively choosing to focus on the positives, you take away the emotional power of the situation. This doesn't mean that anger is never justified, but practicing gratitude helps prevent anger from dominating your emotional landscape. Gratitude. As a daily practice, the beauty of gratitude is that it's a practice, not a one-time fix. The more we cultivate gratitude, the more it becomes a natural response to difficult situations. In other words, gratitude isn't just something we turn to when we feel angry. It becomes a lens through which we view the world. It changes the way we react to challenges, allowing us to focus on the things we can control and the blessings we already have. The philosopher Epicurus taught that he who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing. Gratitude involves recognizing that even the small things in life are precious and deserving of appreciation. When we take time each day to acknowledge what we're thankful for, we shift our focus from scarcity to abundance. This change in mindset reduces the impact of anger, which often arises from a feeling of lack or unfairness. Instead of feeling resentful about what you don't have or what has gone wrong, gratitude trains your mind to recognize all that is good in your life, no matter how small. A daily gratitude practice doesn't need to be complex. It can be as simple as taking a few moments each day to reflect on 3 things you are grateful for. These can be big things, like your health or relationships, or small things, like a cup of coffee in the morning or a beautiful sunset. As you make gratitude a habit, you'll notice that it begins to soften your emotional reactions to stress and frustration, making it easier to let go of anger and find peace in the moment. How to practice gratitude to dissolve anger. Practical. Steps 1. Pause and breathe. When you feel anger rising, take a deep breath and pause. This allows you to interrupt the automatic emotional response and gives you space to choose how you want to react. Shift focus. Actively look for things to be grateful for in the situation. Even in moments of frustration, there are things to appreciate. Perhaps it's the ability to walk, the support of loved ones, or a lesson learned through adversity. Reframe negative experiences. Try to see the situation through a lens of gratitude. What can you learn from this experience? How can it help you grow? Gratitude helps you reframe challenges as opportunities for personal development. Keep a gratitude journal. Every day, write down 3 things you're thankful for. This practice trains your mind to focus on the positive and reinforces the habit of gratitude. Over time, this will make gratitude your natural response to difficult situations. Express gratitude. Share your appreciation with others, whether it's thanking someone for their kindness or acknowledging the blessings in your life. Expressing gratitude strengthens your connections and fosters positivity in your relationships. Anger, while natural, is a powerful emotion that can quickly spiral out of control if not managed properly. Practicing gratitude offers a simple yet profound way to dissolve anger by shifting our focus away from what's wrong and towards what's right in our lives. Gratitude doesn't deny the difficulties we face, but it empowers us to respond to them with a sense of peace and resilience. By making gratitude a regular practice, we can transform our emotional responses, reduce the hold of anger, and live with greater emotional freedom. As the philosopher Cicero put it, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues but the parent of all others. Let gratitude guide your emotional journey, and you will find that anger, when it arises, has far less power over you. Lesson 9. Reframe criticism as a tool for growth. Criticism is something we all encounter in life, whether it comes from a boss, a colleague, a friend, or even ourselves. In the moment, criticism can feel like a personal attack. It can stir up feelings of defensiveness, frustration, or self-doubt. But what if, instead of reacting with anger or hurt, we could reframe criticism? as an opportunity for growth. Criticism, when viewed through the right lens, is not something to fear, but a powerful tool to help us become better versions of ourselves. Criticism is often difficult to accept, particularly when it feels harsh or unjust. The instinctive reaction is often to defend ourselves or push back against it. But the reality is that not all criticism is personal, and not all of it is meant to hurt. By shifting our mindset and viewing criticism as a tool for self-improvement, we can turn what initially feels like a negative experience into something constructive. The philosophical foundation of criticism. Many great philosophers have offered wisdom on how to handle criticism and use it as a means for personal growth. The Stoics, for example, were masters of reframing external challenges and criticisms. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, taught that we should focus on what we can control and accept what we cannot. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This principle is crucial when it comes to criticism. We cannot control how others choose to critique us, but we can choose how we react to it. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of using external events, such as criticism, as opportunities to practice virtue. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The opinion of others is not the measure of your worth. The opinion of yourself is what truly matters." When we learn to view criticism not as a reflection of our personal value, but as a mirror that reveals areas where we can grow, we free ourselves from the emotional weight of negative feedback. Socrates, too, embodied this attitude. He embraced constructive criticism as a way to refine his thinking. His method of questioning, the Socratic method, was based on the belief that truth could be uncovered through dialogue and critique. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." This highlights the importance of self-examination and the willingness to accept criticism as a means of self-reflection. For Socrates, criticism was not a threat to his ego, but an essential part of personal development. The problem with taking criticism personally, one of the biggest obstacles to reframing criticism as a tool for growth is the tendency to take it personally. It's easy to interpret criticism as an attack on our character, competence, or worth. However, when we respond defensively, we miss the opportunity to learn and grow from the feedback. This reaction is often rooted in insecurity or fear of failure. We may worry that if others see us as flawed, it will reflect poorly on us, even though the criticism is aimed at our actions or behavior, not our inherent worth. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke to this tendency when he said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When we have a clear sense of purpose, values, and self-worth, external judgments, whether positive or negative, have less power to shape how we see ourselves. If we are anchored in our deeper sense of purpose, criticism becomes less about defending our identity and more about improving our actions and choices. In other words, when we tie our self-worth to our actions rather than to external validation, we can take criticism in stride without letting it crush our self-esteem. This detachment is key to reframing criticism as a tool for growth. It allows us to separate our emotions from the feedback and focus on how we can improve, rather than feeling ashamed or hurt. How reframing criticism leads to growth. Reframing criticism as a tool for growth requires a shift in mindset. Instead of viewing criticism as something to be avoided or resented, we can see it as a means to improve, learn, and develop resilience. Criticism, especially when delivered constructively, can highlight areas where we can refine our skills, change our approach, or better align our behavior with our values. The philosopher Aristotle advocated for the concept of phronesis, or practical wisdom, which involves learning from our experiences and using feedback to make better decisions in the future. When we view criticism as an opportunity to apply practical wisdom, it becomes a valuable tool for self-improvement rather than a threat to our ego. Let's consider a scenario to illustrate how reframing criticism can work in practice. Imagine you've just completed a major project at work and are eager to present it to your manager. After the presentation, your manager points out several areas where the project could be improved. Initially, you may feel disappointed or frustrated, especially if you worked hard on the project and thought you had done a good job. However, If you reframe the criticism as an opportunity to learn and grow, you can use the feedback to enhance the quality of your work in the future. By taking a step back and analyzing the feedback objectively, you can ask yourself, what specific areas of my work can I improve? How can I use this criticism to strengthen my skills and develop further? This shift in mindset allows you to move from a place of defensiveness to one of openness, creating space for growth. Practical steps to reframe criticism as a tool for growth. Pause and breathe. When you first receive criticism, take a moment to breathe and collect your thoughts before reacting. This pause allows you to separate your initial emotional reaction from a more measured response. Separate the criticism from your identity. Remember that criticism is about your actions or behavior, not your inherent worth. Just because someone points out a flaw or error doesn't mean that you are a failure. It simply means there is an area of improvement to focus on. Ask for clarification. If the criticism isn't clear, ask for specific examples or guidance on how you can improve. This shows that you are open to learning and are committed to making progress. Focus on solutions. Instead of dwelling on the negative aspects of the criticism, focus on how you can apply it to improve. Think about concrete steps you can take to address the feedback and use it to your advantage. Be grateful for the opportunity to grow. Shift your mindset from feeling hurt or defensive to feeling grateful for the chance to improve. Recognize that criticism is a gift, an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. This attitude will not only help you process the criticism more effectively, but will also encourage a growth-oriented mindset in all aspects of life. Use criticism as motivation. Instead of feeling defeated by criticism, use it as fuel for motivation. Let it drive you to refine your skills, increase your knowledge, and strengthen your abilities. Remember, the goal is progress, not perfection. Criticism doesn't have to be a painful experience. It can be a powerful catalyst for growth. By reframing criticism as a tool for improvement, we transform it from something to be feared into something to be embraced. As the Stoics taught, our emotional reactions to external events, including criticism, are within our control. By choosing to view criticism as an opportunity to learn, we empower ourselves to become better, wiser, and more resilient. When we detach our self-worth from the judgments of others and focus on using criticism for growth, we unlock our potential for continuous improvement. As the philosopher Confucius wisely said, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. Criticism, when embraced with humility and curiosity, helps us recognize our areas of ignorance and guides us toward wisdom. So the next time you receive criticism, remember, it's not a reflection of your worth, it's an opportunity to grow. Lesson 10. Master the art of letting go. In life, we all experience moments of frustration, betrayal, loss, or disappointment. These experiences can leave us holding on to anger, resentment, or regret. We replay the hurt in our minds, holding on to the past, and allowing it to define our present emotional state. But here's the truth. Holding on to these negative emotions is like carrying a heavy burden. The real strength lies in knowing when to let go. Letting go is not about forgetting what happened or excusing someone's behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional weight that drags you down, so you can move forward with peace and clarity. The art of letting go is not an easy one to master. It requires deep self-awareness and the courage to face the discomfort of releasing old wounds. However, the benefits of letting go are immeasurable. It allows us to reclaim our emotional freedom, focus on the present, and live a life unburdened by the past. Philosophers, from ancient Stoics to modern thinkers, have long understood the transformative power of letting go. In this lesson, we'll explore how to practice this art and why it's essential for emotional mastery. The philosophical foundation of letting go. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus, recognized the power of letting go of attachments to external events and emotions. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This statement emphasizes that our suffering is often a result of our attachment to things outside of our control. We may hold on to resentment, anger, or regret because we believe we are entitled to something better, or because we cannot accept how things turned out. But the Stoics taught that true peace comes from detaching from these attachments and accepting things as they are without clinging to them. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, writes, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will gladly change it. For I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in his self-deception and ignorance who is harmed." This idea of letting go of stubbornness or pride in order to accept truth is central to Stoic philosophy. Holding on to the belief that we are always right or that we are entitled to a particular outcome only harms us in the end. Letting go of these attachments opens the door to personal growth and emotional freedom. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher and founder of Taoism, also spoke profoundly about the importance of letting go. He wrote, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Letting go, in this sense, is not about giving up, but about releasing old identities, expectations, and attachments that prevent us from becoming who we truly are. Holding on to the past or to old versions of ourselves only limits our potential. Letting go allows us to embrace change and new possibilities, freeing us to grow into our full potential. The cost of holding. On the first step in mastering the art of letting go is recognizing the true cost of holding on to negative emotions. Holding on to anger, resentment, or regret can feel justified in the moment, especially if we've been hurt or betrayed. However, these emotions are not static. They fester and grow, poisoning our thoughts, actions, and relationships. The philosopher Seneca, another Stoic, spoke to the destructive nature of holding on to grudges when he said, "The greatest remedy for anger is time. The greatest remedy for time is to forgive." When we allow ourselves to hold on to anger or resentment, we are, in essence, holding ourselves captive. We are letting someone else's actions define our emotional state. The longer we hold on to these negative emotions, the more control they have over us and the less freedom we experience. In contrast, letting go allows us to break free from this cycle. As the Buddhist teachings suggest, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Anger and resentment only harm us. They prevent us from healing and moving forward. Letting go is the antidote to this poison. It is a way of choosing peace and freedom over emotional bondage. The practice of letting go. Letting go requires active practice. It's not something that happens overnight, but rather something that we must choose again and again, especially when old wounds resurface. Here are some practical steps you can take to master the art of letting go. Acknowledge and feel your emotions. The first step in letting go is to fully acknowledge and experience your emotions. Suppressing or denying what you feel only prolongs the process of healing. As the philosopher Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." Allow yourself to feel the anger, sadness, or frustration without judgment. Only by fully feeling your emotions can you begin the process of releasing them. Reflect on the impermanence of life. Everything in life is temporary, including pain and hardship. The great Stoic philosopher Heraclitus reminded us that change is the only constant in life. Our emotions, like everything else, are impermanent. When we remember that all things pass, including our pain and suffering, it becomes easier to let go of the emotional attachments that keep us stuck. Shift your focus to the present. Often we hold on to past pain because we are too focused on what happened or what could have been. Letting go requires a shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on the past, focus on what you can control in the present. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. In the present moment, you have the power to choose peace over regret and anger. Practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is a central part of letting go. Forgiving others and ourselves frees us from the grip of past hurts. As the philosopher Albert Einstein said, forgiveness is the key to action and freedom. Forgiveness does not mean condoning what happened. It means choosing to release the emotional burden of the past so that we can move forward. Forgiveness is for your own peace, not the other person's benefit. Accept what you cannot change. One of the most important aspects of letting go is acceptance. Some things in life are simply beyond our control. As Epictetus taught, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Letting go requires us to accept what we cannot change and focus on how we can respond in a way that aligns with our values and goals. When we stop fighting against the inevitable, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Create space for new beginnings. Letting go creates space for new opportunities, growth, and change. As Lao Tzu suggested, when we let go of the old, we make room for the new. By releasing the past, we are not giving up on life. We are opening ourselves to the potential of what comes next. Embrace the unknown and trust that letting go will lead to greater peace and fulfillment. The art of letting go is not about forgetting, excusing, or denying the past. It's about choosing to release the emotional weight that holds us back. By letting go of anger, regret, and attachment, we reclaim our emotional freedom and make space for new growth and opportunities. As the philosopher Epictetus so wisely said, "Freedom is the only goal. Letting go is the path to that freedom." Mastering. The art of letting go requires patience, practice, and a willingness to face our emotions head-on. It's a skill that we can all cultivate, one decision at a time. By choosing to release the burdens of the past, we can live a life that is unshaken, resilient, and full of peace. Throughout this journey, we've explored powerful lessons that can help us master our emotions and navigate life's challenges with grace and clarity. From understanding that our reactions are our choice to learning how to let go of the need to always be right, each lesson has aimed to equip us with the tools necessary to protect our inner peace and regain control over our emotional state. The common thread running through all these teachings is that emotional freedom begins with self-awareness and the choice to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. The Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, emphasize the importance of self-mastery and the power we have to control our responses to external events. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters, Epictetus taught, reminding us that while we can't control everything around us, we have full control over how we choose to engage with the world. By reframing criticism, practicing gratitude, setting boundaries, and detaching from others' opinions, we are taking charge of our emotional well-being and refusing to let outside forces dictate our happiness. Ultimately, the path to emotional mastery is not about suppressing feelings or pretending that life doesn't present challenges. It's about learning to respond with wisdom, compassion, and inner strength. As Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." To live an emotionally free life is to examine our thoughts and reactions, to question our assumptions, and to make deliberate choices that align with our values. By embracing these principles, we move toward a life where we no longer feel victimized by the emotions of others or our circumstances. We can walk through life with a steady heart and a clear mind, grounded in the knowledge that we are the architects of our emotional world. In mastering our emotions, we unlock the freedom to live with purpose, peace, and resilience.